Hello, Mr. Burgos. For this assignment on gender roles in society, I have chosen to analyze the roles of women in marriage and family. Today, we'll be discussing women's roles in relation to the three studies of human society: anthropology, psychology, and sociology. To give some perspective on the perception of women in today's society and the advancements that have been made in gender equality, I've created a rough timeline of major events in Canadian history that have impacted the way we view women. 100 years ago, women had very few political rights and were simply expected to get married, have children, and make sure their husband came home to a clean house and a hot meal every night. In fact, before 1929, women weren't even considered persons by the Canadian government. Slowly but surely, women began breaking the stereotypes that society had created for them. In 1903, Emma Baker became the first woman to receive a PhD at a Canadian university. She received a degree in psychology at the University of Toronto. From 1914 to 1918, the first woman served with the Canadian Army Medical Corps during the First World War. More than 2,800 women served overseas in hospitals, on-board medical hospitals, and in several combat zones with field ambulance units. In 1916, women in Manitoba became the first in Canada to gain the right to vote in provincial elections, thanks to Nellie McClung and the Political Equality League. In 1921, Agnes MacPhail, activist and founder of the Elizabeth Fry Society, became the first woman elected to the House of Commons. In 1929, only 91 years ago, women were declared persons by the British Privy Council and were therefore able to be appointed to the Senate of Canada. 31 years later, in 1960, all women in Canada were given the right to vote in federal elections. In 1971, amendments were made to the Canadian Labour Code to include the prohibition of discrimination on the grounds of sex and marital status. It also included the strong reinforcement of the principle of equal pay for equal work and the provision of 17 weeks maternity leave. In 1993, Kim Campbell became the first female Prime Minister in Canada. In 2001, the Canadian Human Rights Commission recommended a proactive pay equity system to Parliament that would establish equal pay for employees without a formal complaint. In 2019, Karen Jensen was appointed the first ever Canadian Pay Equity Commissioner. With all of these major advancements in gender equality in Canada, you may be shocked to hear that today, in 2020, there is still a gender pay gap. The two largest factors explaining the remaining gender pay gap in 2018 were the distribution of women and men across the industries. Here are some statistics that were collected by CBC in 2018. Canadian women earned 87 cents an hour for every dollar made by men in 2015. Canadian women are still more likely to work in traditionally female fields like teaching, nursing, social work, sales, service or administration. 56.1% of women worked in those fields compared to 17.1% of men. That's not much different from 1987, when those figures were 59.2% and 15.7% respectively. Canadian women are also less likely to be employed than Canadian men. 77.5% for women and 85.3% for men in 2015. Women are also more likely to work part-time, 18.9% for women and 5.5% for men, often because they are caring for children. These statistics show that even with all of the historical advancements that women have made, they are still viewed as caregivers and nothing more. Beyond the ignorant assumption that women aren't able to handle high-stress jobs because they are too emotional or fragile, corporations are more likely to hire men because they are more likely to get their money's worth with a male employee in comparison to a female employee, who may have to take a maternity leave or take days off to care for her children. These stereotypes that are prevalent in today's society make it nearly impossible for a woman to ever be seen as equal. The typical role of a woman has shifted greatly from the stereotypical housewife that existed in the 1950s. This video reads an actual guide that was published for women in 1955 that explains all the duties and expectations of a proper housewife.
The Good Wife's Guide. Have dinner ready. Plan ahead, even the night before, to have a delicious meal ready on time for his return. This is a way of letting him know that you've been thinking about him all day and are concerned about his needs. Most men are hungry when they come home, and the prospect of a good meal, especially his favorite dish, is part of the warm welcome needed. Prepare yourself. Take 15 minutes to rest so you'll be refreshed when he arrives. Touch up your makeup, put a ribbon in your hair, and be fresh looking. He has just been with a lot of work-weary people. Be a little gay and a little more interesting for him. His boring day may need a lift, and it's one of your duties to provide it. Clear away the clutter. Make one last trip through the main part of the house just before your husband arrives. Gather up school books, toys, paper, etc., and then run a dust cloth over the tables. Over the cooler months of the year, you should prepare and light a fire for him to unwind by. Your husband will feel that he has reached a haven of rest and order, and it will give you a lift too. After all, catering for his comfort will provide you with immense personal satisfaction. Prepare the children. Take a few minutes to wash the children's hands and faces, if they're small, comb their hair, and, if necessary, change their clothes. They are little treasures, and he would like to see them playing the part. Minimize all noise at the time of his arrival. Eliminate all noise of the washer, dryer, or vacuum. Try to encourage the children to be quiet. Be happy to see him. Greet him with a warm smile and show sincerity in your desire to please him. Listen to him. You may have a dozen important things to tell him, but the moment of his arrival is not the time. Let him talk first. Remember, his topics of conversation are more important than yours. Make the evening his. Never complain if he comes home late, or goes out to dinner, or other places of entertainment without you. Instead, try to understand his world of strain and pressure, and his very real need to be at home and relax. Your goal is to try and make sure that your home is a place of peace, order, and tranquility where your husband can renew himself in both body and spirit. Don't greet him with complaints and problems. Don't complain if he's late home for dinner or even if he stays out all night. Count this as minor compared to what he might have gone through that day. Make him comfortable. Have him lean back in a comfortable chair or have him lie down in the bedroom. Have a cool or warm drink ready for him. Arrange his pillow and offer to take off his shoes. Speak in a low, soothing, and pleasant voice. Don't ask him questions about his actions or question his judgment or integrity. Remember, he is the master of the house, and as such will always exercise his will with fairness and truthfulness. You have no right to question him. A good wife always knows her place.
In relation to gender equality, structural functionalism is the belief that everyone has a role in society, and when men and women perform their roles appropriately, then society runs more smoothly. Functionalist theory argues that all aspects of a society, such as institutions, roles, and norms, serve a purpose that are essential for the long-term survival of the society. This anthropological school of thought would describe a woman's role in the family as a necessity. Even in today's society, women are still expected to perform feminine roles like caring for the children and household chores such as cooking or cleaning. I observed this in the surveys that I conducted about gender roles. While most of the younger subjects answered that everything should be 50-50, most of the adult subjects, male and female, proved that there are still gender roles in the household. Taking a structural functionalist viewpoint, traditional gender roles should be applied in order for a society to run smoothly. Most radical feminists see the family as important in maintaining male power. Radical feminists believe that a woman's natural childbearing role has led to systematic oppression by men. Our society is so entrenched in patriarchy that women can never break out of certain stereotypes. Maintaining gender roles in the family is essential in maintaining the power that is given to men. Categorizing women as housewives is a way to maintain that power. Behavioralism is a theory of learning based on the idea that all behaviors are acquired through conditioning. Behavioralism is a branch of psychology that tries to regulate human behavior by identifying factors that motivate those behaviors in the first place. When you take gender roles into consideration, children are not born with the racism or sexism that is present in our society. It is learned behavior from their social environment. In our society, gender stereotypes are a result of conditioned responses about the roles of women and men. Women are taught to be polite and caring and serving, whereas men are taught to be assertive and strong and independent.
Selma. Og jeg heter Martin.
Jeg heter Ask. Jeg heter Victoria.
Jeg heter Lars.
Og jeg heter Felicia.
Nå har jeg en liten jobb til dere. Jeg tenkte at dere skulle putte de blå ballene i den ene vasen, og de rosa i den andre.
Okay. Skal vi ta rosa i den og blå i den, da? Nei. Annet.
Blå i denne.
Men nå skal dere få belønningen deres.
Oi. Hva er dette for noe? Hva er dette for noe?
Ok, og nå kan dere åpne øynene.
Oi. Hva? Jeg fikk smør.
Molly, grunnen til at du har fått mindre enn Thomas, det er faktisk fordi du er jente.
Det er kjemperart.
Det er ikke bra.
Det er skikkelig urettferdig.
Hva tenker du, Felicia?
Jeg jobbet helt litt, og så får vi ikke det samme. Vi var like flinke, og vi burde få like mye.
Hvorfor det?
Fordi ellers så blir det urettferdig. Det er liksom ikke forskjell på jente og gutt, da. Jeg tenker at det er feil.
Hvorfor er det feil?
Jenter er ikke mindre verdt enn gutter. Det har ikke noe å si hvis man er gutt eller jente.
Sånn, ja. Det er like mye nå.
Nei. Nå har vi like mye. Nå har vi like mye.
Although we have come a long way from the 1950s housewife, gender roles are ingrained in our society. As much as women hope for equality, a woman's God-given maternal role will always be a deciding factor in the way that they are perceived. David Alejandro Fernhead said, "Life is not a competition between men and women, it is a collaboration." This quote is saying that if we ever wish to rid our society of its deep-rooted gender stereotypes, we must stop giving and taking powers from men and women. Equality is about shared power between both sexes.